Day my husband came home waving his phone like he'd just won the lottery, I was elbow deep in dish soap, scrubbing the cast iron skillet I'd used to make his mother's favorite cornbread the weekend before. "Babe," he said, practically vibrating, "you are looking at a man who just got his year-end bonus." I dried my hands on the dish towel, the one with the little roosters on it that his aunt had given us as a wedding gift 3 years ago, and turned around. "How much?" he grinned. That slow, self-satisfied grin I used to find charming. $320,000? I stood there for a second. 320,000. More than 4 times my annual salary at the time. More than we'd paid for our first car, combined. More than what remained on our student loans. "That's incredible," I said. And I meant it. I walked over and hugged him and told him I was proud of him, because I was. What happened next is the part I still think about sometimes. Not with anger anymore. More like the feeling you get when you finally understand a math problem you've been staring at for years. He pulled back from the hug, still smiling, and said, "So, Christmas is coming up? My family's gonna want the big dinner again. You know how they are." I did know. His family's Christmas dinner was a production. 22 people, minimum. His parents, his 2 brothers and their wives, the kids, the cousins who drove up from Virginia, the aunt who always wanted a separate vegetarian option, the uncle who needed gluten-free everything. I had hosted it every year since we got married. I planned the menu in October. I ordered specialty items weeks in advance. I cooked for 3 days straight on my feet from morning until the dishes were done at 11 at night. "Of course," I said. "I'll start planning." "Great," he said. And then, so casually it barely registered at first, "Oh, and let's split it down the middle again this year. 50-50. I looked at him. "Split it," I said. "Yeah, like we always do. Half and half." I want to pause here and give you some context, because this story doesn't make sense without it. When we got married, my husband, I'll call him by what his buddies called him, which was just his last initial, B. When B and I got married, we signed a financial agreement. Not a prenup exactly, more of a financial structure we'd both agreed to with a mediator before the wedding. The idea was that we'd keep our finances mostly separate. Our individual salaries went into our individual accounts. We had a joint account for shared household expenses, mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance. We each contributed an equal dollar amount to that joint account every month, regardless of what we each earned. At the time I signed it, I thought it was modern, practical, mature. What I didn't fully think through was what equal dollar amount actually meant when one person's salary was $94,000 and the other person's was, by that 3rd year of our marriage, $410,000 base, plus bonuses. My contribution to the joint account was a meaningful percentage of my income. His was by that point something he probably didn't notice leaving. And the joint account didn't cover everything. It covered the basics, anything extra. Holiday dinners, birthday parties, family gatherings, the bottle of wine we brought to someone's house, the gift for his nephew, the flowers for his mother. Those got split, 50-50. I want to be precise about what 50-50 meant in practice. It meant I paid half the cost of every Christmas dinner I also fully planned, fully shopped for, fully cooked, fully served, and fully cleaned up after. It meant I paid half the cost of every Thanksgiving centerpiece I also arranged. It meant I paid half the cost of every birthday cake I also baked from scratch for his side of the family. His contribution to these events was showing up and being charming, which, to be fair, he was very good at. So when he said 50-50 again this year on the day he told me about his $320,000 bonus, something shifted in me. Not dramatically. Not with a crack or a bang. More like a quiet, internal click. Like a deadbolt sliding into place. "Sure," I said. 50-50. He beamed, kissed me on the cheek, went upstairs to call his brother. I stood in the kitchen for a long moment. Then I got out my laptop and opened a new spreadsheet. I had always been the planner in our marriage. I'm an operations manager by profession. I plan logistics for a living. I like spreadsheets the way some people like music. They make sense to me. So I opened a spreadsheet, and I started doing what I always do. Except this time, I wasn't planning the menu, I was calculating what this dinner was actually going to cost. All of it. Not just the groceries. I started with the food. 22 people, 3-course meal, premium ingredients, because B's family had opinions about quality, and I had spent years making sure those opinions were satisfied. I priced it out. Heritage breed turkey from the local farm, $187. Prime rib for the non-turkey people, $210. 12 side dishes, 2 soups, 4 desserts, specialty items for the dietary restrictions. Groceries alone came to $847. Then I added the non-grocery costs. The extra folding tables I'd rented 2 years ago and stored in our garage because it was cheaper to own them. The linens I'd bought at Pottery Barn the first year. The centerpieces I made by hand each year, which required ribbon, candles, fresh greenery, small ornaments, the specialty servingware I'd accumulated, supplies, decor, consumables, $214. Then I got to the part that was harder to quantify but not, as it turned out, impossible. I thought about a rate. A fair market rate for what I actually did. I looked it up. Personal chef services in our area ran between $45 and $75 per hour. Event planning and coordination was $50 to $85 per hour. Grocery sourcing and shopping, $25 per hour. Grocery sourcing and shopping, $25 per hour. I used the conservative end of every range. Then I started logging my hours. Menu planning and recipe research, I did this every year, and it took me about 6 hours spread across October and November. $25 and $150. Grocery shopping, 3 separate trips, because you can't get everything in one place when you're cooking for 22 people with dietary restrictions. About 4.5 hours total, including driving. 25 hours/hour. $112.50. Prep work, starting 3 days before, brining the turkey, making stocks from scratch, baking the pies, preparing the components that needed to rest or chill overnight. Day 1, 5 hours. Day 2, 6 hours. 45 hours. 45 hours hour. $25. Christmas Day cooking, I started at 6 in the morning. The last dish came out of the oven at 4 in the afternoon. 10 hours of active cooking, basting, timing, coordinating a meal where 17 different components had to be ready within a 40-minute window. 45/hour, 450 ties, 450 tires. Serving, managing the meal, refilling dishes, keeping everything warm. 2 hours 25/hour. Isticess. Cleanup. Every single year, I was the one in the kitchen at 10:30 at night, loading the dishwasher, hand washing the pieces that couldn't go in the dishwasher, wiping down the counters, putting the tables away, sorting the leftovers into containers so B's family could take them home. About 3 hours, 25 hours, 75 cents or 70 cents. I totaled it up. Labor, $1,332.50. Materials and food, $1,061. Grand total for Christmas dinner, $2,393.50. My 50% share of that, under our agreement, would have been $1,196. Start at that spreadsheet. If we were really doing 50-50, if we were truly splitting this equally, then B's share wasn't just half the money, it was also half the labor. And he had never, in 3 years of Christmas dinners, peeled a single potato. I sat with that spreadsheet for a long time. Then I opened a second tab. I went back through every shared event we'd hosted or contributed to since our wedding. 3 Christmas dinners. 3 Thanksgiving dinners. 3 Thanksgiving dinners. B's parents' anniversary party, which I'd organized and catered from our home, his brother's baby shower, which somehow became my responsibility to host. His work holiday party, where I'd spent 2 weekends cooking appetizers for 40 people and was introduced the whole evening as B's wife. His mother's birthday dinner, every year. The 4th of July cookout we hosted for the neighborhood, which was technically a social event but which B's colleagues attended and which functioned, in practice, as informal networking for him. I logged hours for all of it, conservative estimates, lowest market rates. I didn't count the times I'd bought gifts for his family members. I didn't count the thank you notes I'd written. I didn't count the fact that I learned how to make his grandmother's pie recipe from scratch, because it mattered to his family, and that had taken me 6 attempts over 2 months. When I finished, I had a number. 41 months of marriage. adjusted for events I participated in that were genuinely joint, versus events where I had done essentially all the domestic labor. Conservative market rate for my time and expertise, the total came to $47,830. I stared at it. Then I saved the spreadsheet, named it clearly, backed it up, and then I closed the laptop and went to start actually planning Christmas dinner. Because I had decided something, sitting there with those numbers. I had decided to give B exactly what he asked for. 50-50. I planned the menu carefully. I ordered the specialty ingredients. I sourced the heritage turkey. I lined up the folding tables and the linens and the serving pieces. And then, 2 weeks before Christmas, I sat down with B at the kitchen table with a printed copy of my planning spreadsheet. The food costs one, not the labor one. And I said, "Okay, let's talk about the budget." He looked at the spreadsheet. "This seems like a lot," he said. "It's 22 people," I said. "It's always a lot. But we're splitting it 50-50, right? So your half is $530.50. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, okay. Great," I said. "Here's how I'm thinking about dividing the labor too, since we're doing this as partners. I'll take the planning, the specialty sourcing, the desserts, and the setup. That's roughly my half of the work hours. Your half would be the main grocery run, the turkey prep, cooking the sides on the day, and cleanup." He looked at me. "I don't really know how to prep a turkey," he said. "I'll teach you," I said. "It's not hard. I've done it every year. You'll be fine." There was a long pause. "Can't you just handle the cooking, and I'll do extra on the money side?" he said. "We said 50-50, I said pleasantly. "I want to make sure we're doing this fairly." He got a little quiet after that, said he'd think about it. Over the next week, I sent him 3 gentle reminders about the grocery run. He kept saying he'd get to it. I kept saying he'd get to it. I kept saying, warmly, "Of course, no pressure. Just want to make sure we're set." 4 days before Christmas, he hadn't done the grocery run. I sent him a list, organized by store section, with quantities and brand preferences clearly noted, because I am who I am. The day before Christmas Eve, he came home with 2 bags. 2 bags. For a dinner for 22 people. He'd gotten the items he recognized: a can of cranberry sauce, a bag of dinner rolls, some butter, a bottle of wine. I looked at the bags. I looked at him. "I got kind of overwhelmed," he said. "There were a lot of things on the list I didn't know how to find." "That's okay," I said. Then I picked up my phone and called the catering company I'd quietly gotten the quote from 3 weeks earlier, just in case. They could do a full Christmas dinner package, delivered Christmas Eve afternoon. Enough for 25 people because I wanted to be safe. The cost was $1,340. I confirmed the order, under my name, charged to my card. Then I sat back down at the kitchen table and I opened the labor spreadsheet, the real one. Christmas Eve, his family started arriving. His parents first, then his brothers and their families, then the cousins, then the aunt and uncle with the dietary restrictions. 21 people total, filling up our living room, spilling into the hallway, the kids running up and down the stairs. B was in his element, laughing, telling stories, refilling drinks. I was in the kitchen, not cooking, for the first time in 3 years of Christmas dinners, but arranging. The catered food was beautiful. The caterers had packed it in elegant containers with reheating instructions. I transferred everything to my own serving dishes because presentation matters and because I wanted it to look like mine. At 5 o'clock, I called everyone to the table. They sat down. 21 people arranged around our table, and the 2 folding tables I'd set up in the adjacent space. The centerpieces I had made were on each table. The linens were pressed. The candles were lit. And then I set out the food. There was the turkey, golden and fragrant, the mashed potatoes, the green bean casserole, the sweet potatoes with the toasted marshmallow top that his mother requested every year, the stuffing, the gravy, the cranberry sauce that wasn't from a can, the rolls, warm in a cloth-lined basket, the vegetarian Wellington for his aunt, the gluten-free options clearly labeled so his uncle didn't have to ask. For a moment, the table was very quiet. Not the bad kind of quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when people are genuinely pleased. B's mother looked up at me. "Sweetheart," she said, "this is just stunning. You are a miracle worker." "Thank you," I said. "Actually, since B and I are splitting everything 50-50 this year, I want to make sure he gets credit for his contribution." Everyone looked at B. I smiled at him. A real smile. "He handled the rolls and the cranberry sauce," I said. "Didn't you, honey?" B's brother laughed first, then one of the cousins, then slowly, uncomfortably, a few others. B did not laugh. After dinner, which was wonderful because the catering company was genuinely excellent, I excused myself to the kitchen. I started the coffee. I set out the desserts. B followed me in. "That was embarrassing," he said, low enough that no one could hear. "I thought we were doing 50-50, I said. "You know what I meant." "I'm not sure I do," I said. "I've been hosting Christmas for your family for 3 years. I've never once asked you to peel a potato. This year I asked you to do half because that's what 50-50 means, and you brought home 2 grocery bags." He was quiet. "I can write you a check," he said finally, "for my half of the catering." "I appreciate that," I said. "There's also the matter of my labor." "Your labor." "For this dinner, yes, and for the ones before it." I opened the drawer where I'd put the printed spreadsheet. The second one. The real one. I slid it across the counter. He looked at it for a long time. $47,000, he said. "Conservative estimate," I said. "Lowest market rate across the board. I didn't include gift purchasing, correspondence, or the 6 months I spent learning your grandmother's pie crust because your mother mentioned once that she missed it." He set the paper down. "This isn't how marriages work," he said. "I thought marriages were 50-50, I said. We didn't resolve it that night. His family went home eventually, full and warm and none the wiser. B and I cleaned up together. He did, actually. Washed dishes that night, possibly for the first time ever, in near silence. Over the following weeks, I found a very good family law attorney, not because I'd decided anything definitively, but because I wanted to understand what my options were. She was thorough and direct, and she did not waste my time. She looked at our financial agreement, our 5 years of joint account records, and my spreadsheet. I had since expanded it to cover our entire marriage, and she told me what I needed to know. Our financial structure, it turned out, wasn't quite as airtight as B believed. There were contributions I'd made to our shared life that could be argued as marital assets. The home we lived in was in both our names. The retirement account he'd been building had some exposure. His $320,000 bonus, once the divorce was filed, became a point of significant interest. B hired an attorney too, eventually. There were months of back and forth, mediation, then more mediation. What I walked away with was not $47,830, but it was fair, genuinely, legally, verifiably fair, in a way that our marriage had never been. A settlement that accounted for what I'd contributed and what I'd been quietly absorbing for 5 years. The thing I think about now is not the money. It's the spreadsheet. I built it because I needed to understand something. I needed to see, in plain numbers, what 50-50 actually looked like when you applied it to everything. Not just the costs that showed up on a receipt, but the costs that showed up in the hours I spent, the skills I developed. The invisible coordination that made his family's holidays feel seamless and warm and like they happened by magic. They didn't happen by magic. They happened because I made them happen. And for a long time, I let 50-50 be the excuse that made it easy not to see that. My first Christmas alone, I ordered Thai food and watched a movie I'd been meaning to see for 2 years. I did not brine anything. I did not press a single linen. It was genuinely the most peaceful holiday I'd had in a long time. I'm not telling this story because I'm angry. The anger burned off a while back, somewhere around the second mediation session, replaced by something cleaner and harder to name. Clarity, maybe. I'm telling it because someone needs to hear this. The work you do in a marriage has value. Real, quantifiable, market rate value. And when someone asks you to split things equally while contributing unequally, that's not fairness. That's just a more comfortable word for the same old arrangement. Know your number? Build your spreadsheet. And if someone tells you that's not how marriages work, well, maybe ask them how much a personal chef costs in your zip code. I still have that spreadsheet saved on my laptop, 2 tabs. The first one, the dinner costs. Turkey, sides, linens, candles, the gluten-free options for his uncle. The second one, the full 5 years. 47,830 times, conservative estimate, lowest market rate across the board. I don't open it much anymore, but I kept it because it represents something I wish I'd understood earlier, that clarity is an act of self-respect. Not anger, not revenge. Just knowing the truth of your own situation well enough to write it down in a way that can't be argued with. For a long time, I told myself I didn't mind doing the work, that I was good at it, that it made people happy, that it was my contribution to our life together. And those things were all true, but somewhere underneath them was a quieter, less comfortable truth, that I had stopped asking whether the arrangement was fair, because asking felt like it would disturb something I didn't want to disturb. What I understand now is that ignoring an unfair situation doesn't make it go away. It just means you absorb the cost silently year after year until the number gets large enough that you can't look away from it anymore. That's what happened with me and B, not one dramatic betrayal. Just 5 years of small imbalances that compounded, quietly, like interest. When he said 50-50 again this year on the day he told me about his $320,000 bonus, he wasn't being cruel. I don't think he'd ever stopped to calculate what 50-50 actually meant in our house. That's the part that required something from me. Not fury, but the kind of clear-eyed thinking that doesn't flinch when the numbers get uncomfortable. I had to sit down, open a blank spreadsheet, and be completely honest about what I was actually contributing and what it was actually worth. That took something. It would have been easier to let it go, to absorb it again, to tell myself it wasn't a big deal. But I'd spent 5 years telling myself that, and I had the invoice to show where it had gotten me. The dinner itself went beautifully. The catering was excellent. His family ate well and laughed, and the kids ran up and down the stairs like they always did. What changed wasn't the table. It was me, sitting at it. Knowing what I knew. Holding information I hadn't had in the 3 years before, which was simply the truth of what my work was worth. I think about the version of myself who almost just absorbed it again, who almost said, sure, 50-50, and went back to planning a menu she'd pay half of and cook entirely herself. That version was kind. She was capable, but she had talked herself out of her own intelligence for long enough that she'd stopped trusting her own read on things. What I had to rebuild, during those months of attorneys and mediation, was not confidence exactly. It was something more specific than that. It was the willingness to stay with hard information instead of softening it, to keep looking at the number even when it was uncomfortable, to not negotiate myself down before I'd even made the ask. The settlement I reached was fair, not perfect, not everything I'd calculated, but genuinely, verifiably fair in a way our marriage had never quite managed to be. I walked out of that process with something more durable than money, which was the knowledge that I could handle what was true, even when it was inconvenient. I made Thai food that first Christmas alone, watched a movie I'd been meaning to see for years, didn't brine a single thing. Know what your work is worth. Build the spreadsheet. Don't soften the number because it makes someone else uncomfortable, including yourself.